What's up, motherfuckers? We got 18 viewers, 23 viewers. Let's get it kicking now. Oh, yeah. Nice to have you guys back. Really good to see you here. I'm so tired. Just want to go to the circus. $89 viewers, almost ready to start, y'all. Just want to give everybody, 2 minutes here. You can take this time to smoke up a pipe or a cigar, perhaps. And I think you'll find that if you're smoking a pipe or a cigar, this is all going to be much more pleasurable. And my beard looks really good like this. I might have to do this every day. $118. I'm going to start in 2 minutes. Y'all. Y'all. Okay, if anybody is not in this video, you better get in there. You better get in here, because we are going to be rocking and rolling in a minute. Ow. Okay. All right, should we go? Should I go? Should I do it? Okay. Here we go. You better thumb it up. I'm sleepy. I'm gonna quit. I don't want you guys can't see the rest of this. I'm gonna go to bed. You can watch me sleep for a while. All right, here we go. Enough fucking around. This is fucked up. This story, it gets nasty, you guys. And if you are not 13 or older, I would say you got to hop out of the you got to hop out of this and get out of here while you can. It's dark. This is a dark story. Chapter 17. Billy and the Great Big Circus. The news ticker had said that the Cyber Circus was on Friday. Today was Sunday. Billy knew the chances were slim, but if the circus ran like anything else in the hub, it would be delayed at least until Saturday. If he were lucky, maybe, just maybe, the circus would have been delayed until today. He just might have enough time to catch the final act. For a moment, Billy shuddered to think of what things must have been like when they weren't efficiently run by a central planning committee. How could anything ever have gotten done? He urged his speeder onward, pushing 400 miles an hour, and then 405, 410, maxing the rickety old speeder out at 413 miles per hour on his way to the circus district. He knew he was asking a lot of the iMover, but the lad had a show to catch. Billy took over manual controls and hit the off-ramp, going full speed. The thin plexi-mesh bubble shook violently, but the pizza plate wheels held fast, so Billy bared down hard on the joystick and prayed to God. The speeder bucked and shucked and jived over the pockmarked asphalt, at all points threatening to come unhinged, but somehow holding together. He crossed his fingers, hoping his mad dash wasn't for naught. And it wasn't, because when he pulled into circus parking, the Cyberdome was pulsing with light, and he could hear the dull applause of a far-off crowd. That clown must be working his magic, Billy thought spitefully. The plexi-mesh bubble of the city speeder had hairline cracks all throughout, and the pizza plate wheels were glowing red with heat. He pulled it briskly into an empty spot and left it wide open and running. He looked down at his Omega watch and said a silent prayer to God. "This better work, or I'm toast," Billy said. He pointed the watch at the ground and pressed a series of buttons. The watch blipped and blooped, showed the rainbow pinwheel briefly, and finally it spoke. "Hollow mode engaged." A micro-projector on the platanium alloy bezel fired a thin blue holographic beam down at the dusty, trash-covered Earth. It crisscrossed back and forth, slowly at first, building in speed until it finally moved so fast that the naked eye couldn't see it. When it had finished its operation, there at Billy's feet was a 3D printed holographic hovering board. Billy hopped on and rode it through row after row of parked city speeders until finally he was at the circus entrance. The best part about hollow mode was, while engaged, the watch doubled as a quark coin ASIC miner. In the brief moments it took him to surf across the parking lot, Billy had made enough quark to pay for the entrance ticket. The main digital tent flap was manned by two intimidating bounty hunters. I got coffee grinds in my mouth. One of the bounty hunters was human, albeit with so many cybernetic enhancements that he looked more like an erector set than anything that had ever come out of a woman's body. And the other was Brumelian, or some sort of Tyriosector morphopod. He couldn't very much tell. The morphopod had long, poison-soaked talons and giant bug eyes. It was hard for Billy to decide which one was more lethal, but he made sure to give them both ample room. Billy handed over his ticket and submitted to a quick DNA scan. Last name Boy, first name Billy, middle initial H, male, age 12, gum-dum. It all checked out. He took his ticket stub from the tufts and hurried inside. Under the big triple exomorphic nanodome, there was a highly advanced circus that combined olden days showmanship and bravado with new tech style and digital trickery. There was a giant E-elephant whose trunk could crack the strongest RSA encryption protocols. Cybernetically enhanced gymnasts swung from magnetic grappling hooks on spider steel ropes. The incredible Flamo used bioactive carbon-neutral cold pyrogel to spray the crowd with huge blasts of fire that were no hotter than 17 degrees Celsius. The crowd oohed and ahed as Flamo danced from side to side like a belly dancer and gave them the ultimate light show. Speaking of light shows, the entire inside of the domed structure was lined with TV viewports. Yikes. So if anyone got bored of the circus, they could opt to watch TV instead. Most buildings were like that nowadays, but it was a nice touch, something you don't see at many other circuses, too cheap to install viewers. Billy looked at these screens now as they played the nightly news. 7 killed by a car bomb, unfair racial rules, white race being too unfair and hogging all the goodies, Marioth called Kobayan, both members of My Family, which is the GovCom-sponsored reality show. Everybody watches it. Called him a royal twat. And Nikiu got caught sleeping with Centrino's boyfriend Qualcomm. 3 more members of My Family. All in all, it was a bad news day. There was one positive story, though. Earlier in the week, a poor Afra-happy friend student, obviously motivated by societal unfairness, caved in the head of some stodgy old white teacher with a brick. The Afra-happy friend student apologized and wrote a letter saying he would never do it again, but in the hospital, the stupid old white coot said something racially insensitive. There was a GovCom-wide outpouring of support for the Afra-happy friend youth, and equally strong condemnation leveled at the whitey teacher. national AHF leaders concluded that this type of thing is just going to keep happening until all the whites are killed off. And the leaders of important universities and academic institutions agreed wholeheartedly. Thankfully, the asshole teacher had his career ruined and all his possessions taken away, and Billy smiled, knowing that at least somewhere in the world justice was being served. He pinched himself and bopped himself in the head a few times. He was getting caught up in watching TV as usual. He was here on a mission, and it was important to keep an eye out for the elusive clown. All his old memories came rushing back to him, good and bad. The instant he smelled those fresh, hot E-nuts, he looked around. With the exception of a few high-tech baubles and solar-powered gits and gizmos, he could easily have been sitting on the bleachers at the old circus, the one that had been the scene of his destruction so many years ago. Billy breathed deep and thought of his life all at once in totality. He took mental inventory of the cast of characters, the men and women who'd fucked him over and thrown him under the bus, broken his heart, and spit on him as he laid in the gutter. He tried to think of the people who'd helped him out along the way and shown him love at his weakest moments before realizing there were no such people. He thought of all the fateful turning points where he'd come to a fork in the road and blown it. His decision to buy a flat-screen TV instead of investing in foreign stocks. The tattoos he'd gotten, homeward bound on his collarbones, and a koi fish on the back of his hand, both ensuring that he could never get a job as anything more than a ditch digger. If only, if only. Those two words, if only, were a theme in Billy's life. He'd said them hundreds of times, as there were indeed hundreds of opportunities that Billy could have capitalized upon to turn his life around, if only he'd been awake at the wheel. Standing here in the circus, surveying the crowd, Billy was finally able to think about how, fuck, man. Standing here in the circus, surveying the crowd, Standing here in the circus, surveying the crowd, Billy was finally able to think about these things without judging himself, without making himself want to puke because of how gay he is. His mission was so important, and it meant that he was no longer a person subject to judgment and capable of self-pitying. Fuck this. Ah! That he was no longer capable of self-pity and bellyaching. He was simply a tool of the mission. The mission was everything now. Billy threw himself into it as if it were a funeral pyre, sacrificing his personality and his ego in order to make himself a more effective agent. His cold eyes scanned the crowd. Chapter 18. Billy watches the amazing Big Cresto. God damn. It was then that Sam realized he'd been talking to himself the whole time. He went to bed, satisfied that at least his Litecoin mining rigs were functioning at full capacity. Chapter 18, Billy watches the big, amazing Cresto. God, fucking unreal. How am I even still alive right now? Yikes. Nice chapstick, make my lips all glossy. I guess we're waiting until this. I don't have shit stuck in my teeth anymore. Can someone come knock my teeth out with a hammer, please? And blow my sinuses up with dynamite while you're at it. Out came the announcer. He wore a green suit adorned with red question marks, a pinwheel hat, big $ glasses, and knee-high black leather boots covered in metal buckles. He had a Bluetooth headset that picked up his voice and sent it to the house PA system. Unbelievable. This doesn't take you away from the story at all, does it? I'm joking on nothing. I think it's bedtime. People of all gender identities, sizes, disabilities, and racial defects, welcome to the circus! In every corner of the cyber tent, there were explosions of light and color. Tubes in the ceiling ejected giant snake-like streams of Febreze brand scented party foam. The foam smelled like fresh orchids and lavender, just like a toilet puck. It sprayed and sprayed until it filled every nook and cranny of the tent. Then it melted, leaving gooey blue deposits in people's eyes, mouths, armpits, and everywhere else. Everybody smiled and snapped their fingers, happy to be clean and smelling good now. The first act to come out was the amazing Cresto, the famous disabled, racially challenged she-male lion tamer who was able to do amazing things despite her obvious setbacks. On the far east side of the tent, strobe lights illuminated a long red ramp that Billy hadn't noticed before. At the top, geisha girls did a little dance on their tiptoes and blew kisses at the crowd. The geisha girls giggled, covering their ugly smiles with big paper fans. Then they threw down ninja smoke bombs and were enveloped by a cloud of white smoke. The cloud was parted by the amazing Cresto's considerable girth, which, crammed neatly in a carbon fiber wheelchair, shot through the smoke and came barreling down the ramp at about 70 miles an hour. The wind whipped the big rat's nest on her head, and the speed was so intense that her eyes teared up. The bottom of the ramp wasn't quite flush with the dust and trash-covered circus floor. So, when Cresto's wheelchair hit it, the rear suspension compressed and rebounded with such force that it sent all 350 pounds of Cresto's big, plump body flying through the air and crashing into the dirt. This wasn't part of the show, but the crowd ate it up anyway. Turns out, even in an age of ultimate tolerance, the masses just couldn't get enough of fat slapstick. They pelted her with rotten fruit and hurled insults, and she looked quite pleased, simply glad to have all the attention. One man in the audience who'd had the good foresight to bring a portable pesticide sprayer now rose to his feet for this chance to use the thing. He doused her good, and everyone laughed because fat people have bugs. A group of ugly Oriental lesbians trotted out with an elaborate rope pulley jig. They were the emergency team, trained for just such a calamity, and they worked quickly to secure Cresto's body with high tensile strength ropes. Once she had been laced up to the satisfaction of the emergency team leader, the lesbians gave a good heave and soon had the plump performer back in her carriage. The amazing Cresto, the world's greatest disabled body-positive she-male lion tamer, punched a few commands into her wheelchair's digital interface. On the right side, a carbon fiber panel snacked open with a sharp mechanical sound. Inside was her aerogel-coated nano whip, which she reached for now. The crowd was absolutely titillated, for watching Cresto work her magic with the whip was quite a treat. She wheeled herself to the center of the ring. Slaves pulled 4 great metal cages over so that their placement formed a cross, with Cresto at the center of it. Inside the cages were lions, more majestic and regal than any Billy had ever seen, even on TV or in picture books or in digital pic books. These lions had giant manes of pure snow white. Their bodies were coated in luxurious golden fur, and they had such an air of dignity about them that they seemed more like heavenly beings than creatures of this earth. Cresto flicked her wrist, and her nano whip soared through the air to sting one lion right between the eyes, killing it instantly and scorching the air all around in the process. The whip automatically retracted with an electric crackle and was instantly ready to strike again. Cresto paused to look at the whip settings in her app. Just as she thought, the whip was set to maximum intensity. She must have forgotten to dial it back after the last show, as this was the setting used for the finale. With an elegant 2-finger swipe, she dialed it back now, from 10.0 to 3.5. With the first lion dead, she would have to make sure to milk the remaining 3 for all they were worth. Though Cresto was kicking herself for what is with my fucking nose right now, man? God! Oh, more water. I need more water now. Time for more water. I hope to be a professional comedian. Public speaking is important to me. I need 10 sips of water a minute. You know what? This story is so amazing that even with my terrible storytelling job right now, it's still going to make you stand up and slap your thighs and scream when you hear the rest of it. Though Cresto was kicking herself for making a beginner's mistake, the audience was absolutely elated. Perhaps their positive reaction to her happy accident would convince her to rethink the show. Starting off with a bang seemed to get the crowd rocking right on time. She turned to the second lion and let loose a volley of vicious strikes. The whip cracked and fizzled with 200,000 volts. Many strikes fell upon the bars of the cage and upon the dusty earth, where they would send sparks flying and leave great black marks, respectively, but many more made it through the bars of the cage. Inside, the lion went mad with pain. Its magnificent coat was no defense against the high-tech nano whip and the searing jolts it produced, and the excess electrical energy surging through the cage was causing it to heat up quite a bit. Soon, all his fur had been stripped away, and the naked lion was cooking alive like a rotisserie chicken. The people gleefully slapped their knees and popped popcorn into their mouths. But Billy, despite being quite the animal lover, wasn't paying attention. His thoughts, as always, were with the clown.
Fuck you, Billy. Fuck you.
Cresto was already deep into her third lion when Billy snapped to. This one she had whipped so thoroughly that the animal was in a frenzy, and it charged so fiercely it went into the cage that the whole thing came toppling over. The latch on the top came undone, and everybody in the audience held their breath. Sure enough, out came the lion, furious and thirsting for revenge. The wise and quick-witted Cresto wasted no time. With a quick swipe and two-finger zoom, she accessed her NanoWhip control app in the settings menu. Double-tapped defense mode. The NanoWhip reeled in faster than lightning and coiled around her, forming a spherical shield. Dude. Bro. Get it together. This measure proved to be unnecessary, however, because before the lion could make it halfway to her, three bulky Oriental lesbians stepped forward from the shadows, wielding Stier AUGs and gun swords, and perforated the lion in a hailstorm of hot lead. They were top-level marksmen and had managed to avoid the crowd with their fire for the most part. Everybody went wild. Even Billy, for a moment, forgot about his mission and experienced sheer enjoyment and thrill. Yeah! Cresto lapped up the applause like a thirsty dog and gave the crowd plenty of time to adore her while she set up for the final lion trick. She reset the whip back to normal mode and jabbed a few more commands into her wheelchair control panel. Another carbon fiber panel, this time on the left side, snicked open with the speed and precision of a fine German automobile. I can't believe I'm still reading this, man. It's almost mid. It's 11 p.m. Holy shit. Thank you guys for sticking around. This is pretty cool. And by cool, I mean painful. Can't breathe. She reached down and pulled up with her left hand an olive-drab military-style case, which she then set on her lap. She pressed her thumb against the holographic thumbprint scanner, and the case spoke. "Thank you, Cresto. Identity verified. Case will open in 3, 2, 1. Case opening now. Stand clear. Case open procedure." Inside, she could hear gears buzzing and whirring. There was a burst of steam from the seams of the case. Then it opened. Inside, there were 6 heat-seeking thermite whip tips. Chapter 19. Billy watches the great big lion trick. Oh! There was not a single seated bottom in the whole cyber tent now. The amazing Cresto's whip was whirling and zooming overhead, and everybody was on their tiptoes, reaching for the whip tip as it went by, hoping to be the lucky person to score the prize that day. Faster and faster, Cresto swung her whip, closer and closer to the audience, until finally Billy could feel the heat and the rush of wind on each pass. The whip was set to the highest intensity possible, 10.1, and violent arcs of electrozap energy radiated from it. Cresto was a master showwoman, and she'd worked the crowd into a frothing, foaming hysteria. They were right in the palm of her hand. She pulled the whip in, and the lesbians formed a circle around her and the last lion. They all had Casio drum machines, which they tapped at steadily. Faster, then faster still, The lesbians worked up to a drum roll crescendo and then stopped. Aside from the dull hum of the idle nano-whip, there was dead silence, and everyone in the audience became aware of Z's own heartbeat. Just when the tension was so high that it seemed impossible to stand, Cresto swung and sent the nano-whip crashing into the lion cage with an immense bang. Sparks flew and thermite sizzled. Inside, the lion stood on two legs and walked like a human, perhaps out of desperation, perhaps out of some sick lion sense of irony. The bars of the cage, constructed from special skyscraper steel that could withstand jet fuel fire, melted like ice cream, and the whole structure caved in, killing the lion dead. Needless to say, this was the most fantastic and amazing thing the audience had ever seen. And it's probably the most amazing thing you've ever read about or heard about. They all removed their pockets and their pocketbooks and wallets and threw fiat money as well as physical light coins down into the ring as tribute. An old man, declaring to no one in particular that he'd seen it all, used some pieces of junk from the floor to improvise a zip gun and killed himself, but not before killing his wife first with that same zip gun. Those in the audience who had been recording the event with their iRecorders uploaded their footage to Measy Vids and were competing for ad revenue and views, as well as commenting, rating, and subscribing to other people's uploads. In the center of it all, Cresto sat with outstretched arms, receiving the crowd's love and using it to recharge her black soul so that she could live another day. Then, as quickly as it had all started, Cresto stood up out of her wheelchair and walked off. The announcer appeared. "Thank you very much. She-males and trannies, submissives and amputees of all ages. We hope you enjoyed yourselves and are very much looking forward to seeing you at the next Great Circus." The fanfare died down and people were confused. What the fuck? The fanfare died down and people were confused, most of all Billy. Had this really been it? The great spotlights and strobe lights went off, and the house lights came on. Their cold, fluorescent glow sucked the magic right out of the room. People threw their tickets on the floor and started to pile out of the tent. Chapter 20. Billy's Big Panic. The circus goers were lined up at the exits, but the exits weren't open. There was a din from the people talking. Holy shit, man, there's still a lot to go. Yuck. There was a din from the people talking amongst themselves that gradually grew louder and louder as they realized that they were stuck inside. Some wanted their money back, but most people would have settled for a way out at that point. Then, to make things worse, all the lights died completely, and the backup safety air raid sirens triggered automatically. "Just a routine power failure. Happens all the time in my sector," the man next to Billy said, inches from his face, belching stinky cigar smoke. Billy felt a hand creeping up between his legs. Went the air raid siren. The body heat from 1,000 panicked people in an unventilated space was oppressive. The moisture from their collective sweat was sickening. Whoops. How about right here? There we go. We got Bioli 2 at the end. We got a monitor. I'm in physical pain sitting in my chair right now. Moving my monitor around. Got a Razer mouse. Very nice. Here we go. Wow. That did a lot of good. And now I can adjust my back pillow. And like a master storyteller, adjust my crotch. Use my Razer mouse. It's got 6,000 DPI. It's so fast it's barely usable. Got to adjust my back pillow again. Got to wiggle around and make noise. You can hear the leather and the chair creaking. I'm a master storyteller. My mouth's full of a hot spit. I can't even breathe. I got marker on my face. I'm one of the best storytellers of all time. I'm like Spalding Gray. And here we go. Billy's Big Panic. The guy talking to him, he's got a hand going up his legs. Okay. Hold on a second. What the heck? There's a hat on my head. Whoa. Ooh, woo. Where do I get this? Oh, there we go. Very important. Where's the monocle I ordered? There we go. Nice. That's kind of dumb. That's not cool. These are cool ones here. All right, here we go. Okay. Nice. All right, guys. Now, let's raise the interaction. I'm getting really tired here. I'm getting all fucked up. So we're going to have to use some viewer participation to get things cooking. When you hear this noise, I want you at home to look into your webcam and clap. Okay? I want you to do that. You have to do that. All right? Promise me you'll do that right now. Promise me. Thank you. I fucking can't talk, man. This is pathetic. Okay. The body heat from 1,000 panicked people in an unventilated space was oppressive. The moisture from their collective sweat was sickening, and combined with all the cigar and pipe smoke, it made Billy want to puke. The stinky breath came in close again. Don't worry, kid. We're going to get out of this just fine. I've been in plenty of jams. If anything bad happens, just stick with me and I'll show you what to do. The hand, presumably belonging to the man, rose higher and higher between Billy's legs, scratching and tickling him the whole time. He didn't know if he liked it or not, but until someone turned the lights on, there wasn't much he could do about it. Initially, Billy had hated the touch of a man, but over the years he'd grown so used to it that even the worst male touch was only a nuisance, and sometimes an enjoyable distraction. Billy heard someone's tummy rumble. The voice of an older woman rang out. Oh God, I'm sorry, everyone. I just can't take it anymore. There was another rumble, followed by a ghastly fart. The wet sound alone was enough to make even a U.S. Marine beg for mercy. But soon after, the smell so thoroughly saturated the air that it felt as if the whole world were made of her shit. Her fart was in Billy's eyes, his hair, in his shirt, in between his toes, everywhere. And it was no different for the people around him. Hands reached out. Men and women staggered and clawed at the air, looking for something to catch their balance. Someone unloaded on Billy's shoes with lukewarm sick. The man with the pesticide sprayer was spraying for dear life. Men who had extra cigars on them tucked them neatly in each nostril, hoping in vain that somehow the tobacco would filter or mask the stench. It was a mess. The air raid siren whooped for the last time, and then there was silence. In the darkness, men sat huddled, clutching their knees to their chests and puffing quietly on their cigars and pipes. Billy had years of sewer plant experience to fortify him against such smells, but even he was still reeling minutes after the acrid butt had died down. Thankfully, those in the crowd who'd gone into fits of mania had managed to calm themselves. The wounded tended to their wounds, and many made silent prayers of thanks to God. Evidently, there wasn't a power outage, because the announcer cleared his throat into his mic. Ahem. Sis and non-sis, are you ready? The confused crowd remained quiet. I said, are you ready? Before anyone could reply, there was a violent explosion of sound and color. The Jock Jam song blared over the PA loud enough to burst eardrums, and high-powered strobes and laser lights illuminated every square inch of the place. All around, jaws were on the floor, and one by one the huddled people rose up with mixed feelings of astonishment and triumph. The announcer was breakdancing. The announcer was breakdancing and doing parkour so fast in the center ring that no human eye could make out all his moves. He did front flips, back flips, double back flips, all just as a warm-up. He then assumed a wide-legged karate stance and punched the air so fast his hands appeared to be one big blur. Oh, you got this? He barked into the microphone. People in the bleachers were doing handstands, chewing their cigars and eating them, clenching their fists white-knuckle tight. The announcer then ran to the edge of the ring and waved his hand in a windmill motion several times before putting it up to his ear, letting the audience know that he couldn't hear them. They screamed so loud, it was unbelievable. But he mimed again, as if he couldn't hear them. He made his face pouty, and his eyes had a teasing glint in them, which drove the people to be even louder with their next screams. Finally, is there an alien living in my nose here? Finally, it was enough to satisfy this master showman, and he ran to the other side for a repeat performance. He then started clutching at his arms and shivering, pretending to be very cold. Those who'd seen this act before knew what he wanted and obliged him, puffing fast at their cigars and pipes to warm him up. The announcer started to warm up a bit, soothed by the warming smoke of pipes and cigars, and made gestures for the rest of the audience to join in. Soon, everybody was taking fast puffs and blowing smoke towards him, as he laid casually on the ground with his hands behind his head like a sunbather. What a delight from this virtuoso crowdsman. He hurried to the center of the ring, short step sprinting and making fast hands like a football player. Off went the music, along with the lights again, except for spotlights, one from each corner of the tent, which swung over and beamed on him, as if he were God. To the east and to the west, shadowy figures scuttled about. They ran towards the announcer, and everyone could see that it was the two lesbians, each holding one glow stick. The lesbians knelt before the master of the ring and presented the sticks. The announcer snatched up the two small plastic rods and dismissed his attendants with swift, roundhouse kicks to the ribs. The lights went out completely, and again the tent was black. When the rabid applause and catcalls subsided, the announcer spoke. "You folks," he laughed, slightly out of breath. "You folks, you thought the circus was over, didn't you?" There was no response, for their collective hypnosis was too deep to respond from. Instead, the people fixed their eyes on him harder and bit down on their lips. "Well, guess what? Guess what? This little old show is just getting fired up. Yeah!" The song Clubbed to Death came on. With a spine-curdling crack, he snapped both glow sticks, causing them to burn with the green fire of twin alien suns. Then he simply stood there like a statue as the dramatic violin intro part of the song played. And as the beat dropped, he began to move his hands in a frenzy, a glowing light show, such as none had ever seen. I'm hoping you guys were able to hear the music. Otherwise, I'd say that was pretty bad. Oh. The announcer jumped and spun and punched at the air with both sticks, creating beautiful green shapes that teased the eyes and defied logic. In perfect sync with the melody, he whirled these curious little luminescent devices through the air with the skill of an expert, giving people a light show such as they had never seen and will never see again. As the music worked its way closer and closer to a crescendo, he kicked and pumped the air more and more dynamically. The speed and force of his thrusts were matched only by their grace, and the green plasma traced a painting in the air that not even God could match. The announcer's face was hidden in the darkness, but he had tears in his eyes as he delivered his greatest work. Then came the piano solo. The crying announcer stopped his flamboyant gestures and let the glow sticks fall to the ground beside him. Fuck. Very dim lights came on, barely enough to make out the features of his handsome, elegant face, but everybody in the audience could tell how the pure expression of art had rocked his body, and they were touched by it. The music faded, and he finally managed to compose himself enough to speak. Circus is never over, folks. You people go home, you go back to your lives. Once the big show comes to a stop, the Grand Theater closes its doors. But inside, the players, in here, he clutched at his chest. In here, the circus never dies. She-males and trans men, I give you the clown. Billy had been moved by the announcer's little speech, but in the blink of an eye, the blood in his veins turned to ice. He was no longer nervous, regretful, or angry. He just smiled. He smiled, perhaps the smile that only the clown himself could recognize. It was the smile of the mouth, but not the eyes. The eyes were frozen pools of molten lead, so hot they could freeze anyone caught in their gaze. The announcer pulled a zipper from the top of his head, and the green suit and pinwheel hat fell to the floor in one piece, along with his skin and hair. There, looking Billy dead in the eyes, stood the clown. Told you. Told you, bitch. Don't you dare leave. Chapter 21. Billy's Last Stand. Billy couldn't tell for sure if the clown had indeed recognized him, or if he was just staring at Billy by coincidence. So much had changed over the years, and the lad had aged doubly fast from his hard lifestyle. The cute kid who didn't care much about anything except going to the circus was gone now, and in his place stood a hard-scrabble, weary survivor. If the clown had indeed recognized him, Billy thought, then he would truly have to have had demonic powers. Meanwhile, the crowd was absolutely going bananas. The delight on their faces reflected what was in their hearts. They were witnessing a once-in-a-lifetime performance, and they all knew it. And if the announcer had a taste for applause, this new clown had a hunger for it. He skipped and did parkour all around the rings, absorbing the applause energy and rewarding the fans with killer moves. "Refresh your pipe, sir?" a big-titted smoke girl asked Billy. She had a big tray of cigars, pipe tobacco, and hokum dogs slung around her shoulders. Billy looked down at her big tits, which were spilling out all over the confections. "No, thank you." When Billy turned back to look at the show, an Oriental lesbian was scurrying out with a tall glass of water, and the clown was halfway up a giant ladder. He kept climbing, higher and higher, until finally he had reached the top, almost able to touch the tent canopy. Tight. It's dope. The ugly Oriental lesbian deftly lit 8 scented candles and placed them on the ground in a ritual formation with the glass. Men and women sat in hushed silence, waiting with bated breath for what they knew would be an amazing trick. And boy, was it. Even Billy had to hand it to him. The clown's next move was a showstopper. He did a quick MC Hammer dance back and forth across the platform at the top of the tent and jumped right off, free-falling towards the glass below. The audience gasped. The clown seemed to hover in the air as he struck different poses and did an assortment of tricks. One second, he had the grace of a swan, striking a pose straight out of a ballet playbook. The next second, he was as sleek and aggressive as a T-25 strike drone. He flew 10 stories before finally assuming a belly flop pose, striking the glass at just the right angle, then disappearing inside with a big splash. There was no applause because the people were all too dumbfounded to understand what they'd just seen. Then, inside the glass, somehow, the clown whirled his arm in a big windmill motion and brought it to his ear. The crowd erupted. Even Billy had to stand up out of his seat and clap for dear life. It goes to show, you can teach an old clown new tricks. And while Billy might not have liked this clown, he had to give him kudos and admit it was quite a trick indeed. The big, plump old sow who'd nearly killed the whole tent with her gaseous excretions was clapping frantically and wiggling so hard her clothes nearly came off. Billy would have expected an older woman dressed as nicely as her to have a bit more poise and dignity. But I guess once you fart in front of 1,000 people, Billy thought, you can let yourself go in other areas as well, especially if you're a woman. She hooted and cried, "Oh, fuck! Oh, fuck! What the fuck? What the fuck?" Boy, she's really losing it, thought young Billy. But little did Billy know that he would be losing it soon as well. Once the fanfare had died down, big Afro-happy friend men wearing elegant bronze armor and helmets trotted out, wheeling behind them a cart overflowing with cream pies. As the people around him laughed and slapped their thighs, Billy felt his insides turn to a flaming block of ice, so hot it could freeze Mount Everest. So hot it could freeze Mount Everest. There were pies. There were pies of every type on the cart. Shaving cream pies, whipped cream pies, skin cream pies, dairy cream pies, cookies and cream pies. Billy looked down at his Omega Speedmaster. He had mined enough quark coin to pay for a good meal, but the watch had overheated and was totally fried. "Dang," Billy said out loud. "I guess you can destroy an Omega watch after all. Looks like I'm on my own." He fixed his eyes back on the clown, who almost seemed to wink at Billy as he pulled himself out of the glass. Again, he heard the cruel clown calling to him from the past.
Fuck! Fuck you! Fuck you!
Everybody in the audience was wearing a dumb, greedy smile. The time had come for the great pieing. For some, it was the most entertaining part of their show. For some, it was the most entertaining part of their lives. And for many more, it was a rite of passage, more important than a bat or bar mitzvah. The clown took a few warm-up shots at his armor-clad assistants. "Pick me! Me! Pie me!" a young boy cried out from the far side of the tent. If he only knew what terrors he wished upon himself, Billy thought. But deep down, he knew the truth of the matter, that this young boy across the ring wouldn't be receiving a pie, because the clown never pied the brave. The clown only pied cowards, and Billy was a coward. He tilted his chin up and made his chest broad. He was on a mission, and he was no longer Billy. He was just the agent of the mission, there to ensure its success, and useless if it were to fail. It didn't matter if you were a coward or a little Nancy boy. It didn't matter if he was a plump little prince who'd been given everything on a silver spoon and thrown it away like a fool. He was going to make his stand here and now, because if he didn't, the whole universe just might implode. The clown whizzed around the tent, chucking pie after pie with mechanical precision, until pretty soon most of the front row wore cream-covered smiles. But underneath those smiles was pure cold fear, because everyone knew that to not take a pie with the utmost stoic bravery was to be doomed. The pies all had razors and needles in them, and quite a few people lay face down on the ground and on the bleachers, nursing their injuries. For the most part, these people were just thankful that their pieing was over with. But many of them silently cursed the clown and wished vengeance upon him. Maybe it was better that Billy didn't know this, for if he knew that there were others who'd felt this chilling sting of the clown, his own bloodlust would have been dulled by the feeling of camaraderie, and he would have lived out the rest of his life as he had been living the past few years. As the clown made his rounds, making things creamy and giving everyone a good show, Billy lost his cool. He couldn't hold back the raw emotions anymore, and he began to blubber with an impotent rage, just as he had done so many years ago when the clown had stripped him of everything. Billy wasn't the general. He wasn't an agent on a mission. He was a stupid coward, an angry, sad, fucked up little mess, good for nothing and nobody. Petter learned that the hard way, back when Billy got him killed. What's that sound? A man with a cigar standing in front of Billy said. God, is that, what the? The man turned his head to look for the source of the willy weeping. When he saw Billy, the confused look on his face turned to anger. Kid, you're ruining the show. What the hell's the matter with you? Billy didn't respond, and the man became even more irate. He took a big puff of his cigar and then reached to extinguish the smoldering thing on Billy's shirt, giving him a good burn. But Billy just kept blubbering like a coward, staring at the clown.
Fuck you, Billy! Fuck you!
Look what you did, you little brat. You made my cigar go out. The man laughed now as he teased and tormented Billy. People in the immediate vicinity were starting to pay attention, and now there was a decent-sized circle around Billy and the cigar man, watching the little scene unfold. The cigar man poked at Billy's chest hard with 2 fingers. Billy, eyes red from crying, couldn't look away from the clown. You're fucking up my show, dude. See, you fucked the show up for me. How about I make you into a show? See what happens when you mess with an Italian? All around Billy, people were pelting him with eggs and spitting on his shoes. Some were polishing their steel-toed boots, getting ready to give him a good tap between the legs. The cigar man was loading a gun now, hoping that Billy would give him a good reason to use it. But in Billy's head, there were only 2 people in that whole tent. Just him and the clown. The clown was looking left and right, holding his hand over his eyes, as if there were intense sunlight overhead, hunting for his next victim. When he locked eyes with Billy, time froze. If the clown was at all surprised at seeing Billy after all these years, he didn't take any extra time to show it. He crouched low and stalked toward Billy, pie in hand, like a wild predator. Reaching into his Timbuktu messenger bag, he pulled out a handful of razors and needles to give this pie a little something extra. Billy bawled and blubbered, and the nasty people around him continued to fling garbage at him and shout profanities. The man with the cigar egged on the clown. Hey, Mr. Pie Guy, come over here and get this fucking kid good. Fucking blubbering coward, he's a fucking pasta primavera. Billy squealed and wriggled. There was no help in sight. His father, the general, was away at the Great War. His mother had a brand new little boy. No time to help old smelly Billy. Musty was put in a crusher after Billy got busted for street racing. Billy knew full well how Petter had met his demise. Billy was racking his brain, trying to think of one person out there who still cared for him and loved him, but there was no one. If only the world's problems could be solved by crying, Billy thought. If only I had an army of generals at my side to protect me during my cowardly moments. If only I could have Einstein's brains in my big old lunkhead instead of a bunch of moldy crab apples. If only, if only. There were those 2 sorry words again. The clown was upon him. The pie was a mere 10 feet away, flying at him in slow motion. Was he damned to repeat this scene over and over again? If only, if only. Was the clown actually the devil? Was this hell? If only. Blubbering coward, the general. His peripheral vision went black, but he saw the clown's gnashing yellow teeth with perfect clarity. If only, mashed potatoes head, fuck you. The razors and needles gleamed from inside the cream pie. Albert Einstein had once said that the future of humanity was a boot stomping on your toes forever. But he was wrong. The future of humanity is a face full of razors and needles forever. He could hear Petter cursing at him now. Fuck you, Billy. He heard his father, the general. Fuck you, Billy. The soothing, robotic female voice of Musty, his co-workers at the sewage plant, Bartholomew, his mother, all in chorus, all sounding like the clown now.
Fuck you.
The clown stopped dead, and the people assaulting Billy fell silent. He looked down at his feet. Somehow he was standing tall, and the tears had stopped flowing. The clown dropped his pie as Billy opened his mouth to speak.
No. Fuck you.
The end. Epilogue. Billy went on to have a great life. His father, the general, came back from the Great War with a great treasure that he had captured from the other side. Billy used this treasure to invest in foreign companies as well as cryptocurrencies, and even set a little bit aside to help Chip Foose build Musty 2. Bartholomew wasn't forgotten by Billy, and when Billy had reestablished himself in the world, one of the first things he did was upgrade Bartholomew to a Nathaniel. Billy and Nathaniel had a great many adventures together, and Billy used Nathaniel's privacy filters to surf the web, the deep web, and buy all sorts of goodies and Christmas presents and download cool stuff. Petter found himself near the outlet of the hub's main sewage drain, washed up on the beach. He was a bit banged up, and every orifice of his body was jam-packed with tootie, but he certainly wasn't dead. A few weeks later, he and Billy were back to being friends again, and although his Goldie status had been stripped for mismanagement of the plant, he was still a glove nub, and that wasn't so bad. Billy's mom raised her next little boy very well, and he went on to do good things and be a good worker, and be a good building block drone worker. Paper shuffler. Billy's mom continued to have lots of boys and girls, because for mommies, it's very important to keep having kids. The only thing that a mommy can do in life that's worth anything really is to have kids. So raising a family and having lots of babies is very important for mommies. Of course, a mommy can't ever do a useful job or come up with any good inventions or any cool things, so it's important that they provide the raw biological material for civilization to continue. The world always is going to need ditch diggers, and the mommies provide them. The hub remained a safe and fair place to live for many years to come. New computer algorithms were created to ensure that the wealth was all divided fairly, and that no person could ever be mean to any other person, regardless of status. Eventually, class warfare came to an end when the new leader of the hub, Malubutu Zumbaze Mosdef, the first Nigerian citizen to become the president of another country, declared that all citizens would be Goldies from now on. The clown carried on in his evil ways, but his edge had been dulled, and his maniacal pranks no longer had the same bite to them. He would still pie people at the circus, but his act was no longer the finale, and people didn't treat his shtick with the same fear and reverence that they once did. So, folks, if my estimates are correct, your cigars and pipes are probably coming to an end. You're probably sucking at the bottom of a big 20-liter soda pop, probably sucking a big 64-ounce Diet Coke, big Coca-Cola, maybe a root beer, and the show is over. So I'd like to say thank you guys for watching. Thanks for sitting through this hell with me. This has been totally insane, and I hope it wasn't terrible. I don't really know whether or not it's terrible. You never know when you're doing this type of thing, whether it sucks dick or whether it's any good. But there it is. And you're invited to create your own Billy fan fiction. In fact, a few stories have already started rolling in. And lastly, if you guys like this story, that's nothing to do with it. The book we're coming out with is fucking awesome, and we're not gonna. I don't think we're gonna have to do a pre-order or anything like that. We're not gonna have to like try to assemble money beforehand. I think we can just probably just get them printed straight away. I'm not sure yet, but just get excited about it because they're gonna be. It's so good. We've been working on it for months, and we got 600, 500, 450, 500 pages. Whoa, 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 whoa! This is our working copy of the book right here. This is like 1/3 of it. And as you can see, it's got cool cartoons. This is one of Nick's cartoons. This is Pussyface, and this is her boyfriend. And he says, "Matt Barnes, you fucked Matt Barnes. Pussyface, you fuck everybody." And that's her shtick. Her deal is that she fucks everybody. It's gonna be good. What else? Oh yeah, and guys, if you enjoyed this, please tip generously. I accept digital coin, dev coin, secure coin, yacht coin, and as soon as it's released, I'll be accepting Zero coin. Please keep your Bitcoins and Litecoins to yourself because I don't need them. So those are antiquated, old technologies. That's the Napster of cryptocurrencies. And send PayPal. PayPal me $1 right here. Give me a tip. Come on, hit me. I love begging for money. alienmode@gmail.com. All right. Thank you very much for staying up late with me. And remember to take your vitamin D and get out of the fucking house.